Hi guys, and welcome to this new section and this new lecture. It's all about shapes now. We want to understand the shape layers more in depth and understand how to manipulate shape layers and how to add and compound shapes. Usually to create shapes and to create the shape layer, we come to the toolbar, choose our shape tool, click and drag to create a shape. We can obviously add the number and reduce them. And we have our first shape here, for example. In the timeline, a shape layer has been created that has a content and a polystar. The polystar here, you can see it has many different parameters. You have the polystar path. Actually, this is the shape itself. This polystar one, we call it a group. I will explain this to you later on in shape groups. But you have the polystar, and the polystar has its own parameters. You can change from star to polygon, for example, or we can keep it a star. You can change the number of points the way you want them. For example, we give it 15. And we can change its position. The position here is the position relative to the anchor point of the shape layer. For example, if I use my selection tool and double click on the layer, I have the shape layer here, and we can see its anchor point in the between. Let's increase the inner radius, and we see it very nicely. So you have the anchor point of the shape here. If I move in this position under the polystar, I will be changing the position of the shape itself, that is polystar path 1, according to its own anchor point. We most probably want to keep this one to 0 unless you have some very specific reasons why you want to move it from its anchor point. Also, the rotation, it is rotating on its anchor point, and you are rotating the polystar path, which in that case is the polystar 1 for now. Now you have the inner and outer radius, we have seen how, and you have the roundness and outer roundness. Fine. So this polystar 1 has its own transforms. So if you click here, you will have very many transforms according to the polystar or the polystar path. If you look at it, the transform here will animate polystar 1. It's even written. So if you open here, you can now move the position. Now this is the trick. The position here is a relative position for the anchor of the shape layer. For example, if you move it, you will notice that you're not moving the anchor point of the polystar path, you're moving the shape according to the anchor point of the shape layer. Shape layers are always created in the middle of your composition, not the polystar, not the polystar path. Only the shape layer, it has its anchor point in the middle. And this position here is about where is the shape compared to the anchor point of the shape layer. If you put it to 0, then your shape is in the middle of the shape layer, which is also in the middle of the composition, and then your shape here is in the middle of the composition. And that's the way to center a shape, in the middle of the composition or in the middle of its own layer. You do not come and open the proportional grid, or I don't know, tile and action grid, and start putting, pointing here and try to open from here. That's not the right way. The right way is to come here in the shape transform, or the polystar transform in our case, and make the position 0, 0. The scale now here is a scale. You notice also the stroke is scaling up and down, is becoming smaller and bigger. I will undo that twice. Fine. You have an additional one, which is the skew. Pretty nice. You can do quite some animations. And you have rotation. Let's create a rotation only for this polystar path 1 or the polystar. So I will use transform polystar 1. I will keyframe the rotation, come after 3 seconds and make it 1 or 2. And then you notice that your shape is rotating. It has an animation, but your shape layer did not move. You have 0 animations here. Cool. That's one. Now, we can come and create new shapes inside the shape layer. So I have polystar here. I will come to content and create, for example, a rectangle. Let's make a rectangle just here. So notice now my rectangle is here. I can move it and put it in the middle. Of course, I have a rectangle 1, that's the group. Inside there is a rectangle path 1. It has a size. I can size it up and down anywhere I want. It has a position, of course, relative to its own anchor point this time. And it has the transform rectangle 1, where you have the position according to layer, the shape layer. You can just center it in between. And you have your skew and rotation and so on. We can also animate the rotation here. And if you make it 0, then we come here, we make it -2, for example. So now what happens? We animating the shapes, but we animated inside their own path. So we are really not touching the layer yet. So you notice how powerful is this. Let's create another shape inside. We click on our shape layer and we choose polygon. That will do. Come in the middle somehow and try to draw our polygon like this. Cool, we can move it down. That's fine. Now we have another polystar. If you open, we have the polystar path, and it's a polygon, not a star. And we keep it polygon. We have the number of points that we can change, exactly the same, and we have its rotation. Now notice here you're rotating according to the anchor point of the polystar 1. Cool, let's put back this one to 0. And we want to change its fill. Let's make it darker, or let's take a totally new color. Good. And let's remove its stroke. So notice I did not change anything in the shape layer. I changed in polystar 2. Now polystar 2 also we can give it an animation. For example, we come to polystar, transform, and let's use the rotation again. We keyframe the rotation. We can come back here and give it, for example, -1 only. So now we have animated all our shapes. Here you are, they are all turning. Yet we did not animate our shape layer. So let's go and animate our shape layer. We will come to the transform here. Let's stop the animation. We keyframe the position and the scale. For example, scale it at let's say 10% so we can see it. And then use our selection tool, hold it and bring it here. That's, we wanted to start from here. After 3 seconds, for example, we get it back to 100 in the scale. And of course, we want the position to come over here. Cool. So now we have animated almost everything. That's what's happening. We have 3 shape groups that are animated inside a single shape layer. And in the next lecture, we will learn how to create a shape layer from its initial stage.